The idea behind SAGA Iron Man Day is to deliver a different kind of tournament. I think for most tournaments people will turn up with an army, or in this case a war band that they play with regularly. They're very familiar how the game mechanics works for that particular army. So what I wanted to do with Iron Man is to test people's ability to play the game, not just their particular warband. So the idea is that people will turn up, be randomly allocated a warband out of about 14, 15 choices. The chances are they may have played one out of the 4 games that they play during the day. They may have had one of the warbands before. Also, they will play a different opponent each time and a different warband each time. So over the course of the day, somebody could encounter anywhere from 6 to 8 different warbands that they've not used before. So it just gives them an idea of how varied a game Saga can be. They're also against the clock, that games will finish at a certain point. So they will have to stop playing there. They can't sort of spend hours deliberating over the next move. So it's a combination of agility, speed of thought and endurance.
So do I.
First game I drew the Vikings as my opponent and I had the Welsh army. It's not one I'm that familiar with, so it's good to play something different. The Welsh were very good. I've got a 2-point Hearthguard unit mounted with javelins which ran amok around the field. Unfortunately the Viking saving throws were very poor, which was to my benefit, and he lost a lot of troops in the early 2 or 3 turns. Yeah, I only actually used the 1 unit. It's a very strong board for a mounted Hearthguard unit with javelins. That's hit and run tactics. You move up, you shoot again, and then you run away.
You've got fatigue for second activation.
Okay, game 2. I was Irish, which is good for me because that's one of my usual armies that I take to tournaments, and I was playing against Nick, who had the Scots. Unfortunately for Nick, it's not a board he's familiar with at all, which was good for me. It was a slow start because we were quite a distance away. His levy came up. Unfortunately, the terrain really favours the Irish, so I managed to pick off some of his men before he got anywhere near me. And we got down to the last turn, and I reduced him to 5 levy. I've played against him a few times, but not very often, so I'm not that familiar with the board either. But we did have a practice against them earlier on in the week. Tough game, game 3. I was using the Byzantines against a Pagan Russ. Pagan Russ notorious for slowing the game down, using the Great Winter, which is what happened on the first 3 turns. So it took me until my 3rd turn, moving twice each turn to get close enough to do anything. This scenario, this tournament is based on maximum kills points. When you spend half the game getting into melee, you're limiting what you can actually achieve by the end of the game. We both finished on 19 points, good close fought game and a good opponent. Okay, for the last game I played the Anglo-Danes and I played against the Normans. The Normans, a lot of mounted troops were dancing around the table trying to keep out of range of me, which made getting across the table very difficult. Managed to get in the second half of the game, and I think I've just done enough. So we'll have to see when the scores come in.
Games went badly. Games went really badly. Last game of the Welsh was the only game I won. Didn't earn that many points out of it, but did really well. The other 3 armies I played with John's Vikings, where he just didn't let me get any wrath up at all. Steppe Tribes, where I couldn't activate anything at all, so I just got into melee and that was bad. My first game was ANGLO-DANES where I don't know what happened there.
Well, I think I did pretty well, a lot better than I expected. Started off with a Welsh army, moved on to Normans, which is my favourite army, but I didn't do so well with that one. Had a really good learning curve with the Skraelings, they're really fun to play with, and ended up with a Byzantine army, which I did mediocre, but I did lose my Warlord again.
Well, haven't done too well, I think it's fair to say. I played with 4 different war bands, 3 of which I'd never even seen before. Byzantines, Rus Princes, and I even forget the third one, but I did end up with Normans, which I have played against before. So yeah, and I also played against 3 war bands I'd never actually seen before. So in terms of the day, I've learned an awful lot, but at the wrong end of the battle.
But it's been such good fun. The whole point of what I wanted to do today was to sort of learn how to play the game. Like, we played it before, didn't go down too well at the club, so I wanted to learn how to play it properly so I could go back and actually go, right, this is the rules, this is how we play it. There's no problems anymore, we can just enjoy a game.
Excellent, it's a really fun day, and it makes you learn stuff that you wouldn't normally expect. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it.
You know, I really enjoy these days, Dan. I think the atmosphere is always very relaxed. It doesn't really matter where you come in the day, and I've achieved what I wanted to do, which was to play, you know, a number of games of Saga against some really good opponents and using armies that I'd never would have had the opportunity to do. The fact that we were supplied with some beautifully painted figures and some very exotic armies has just made it really interesting for me. I think it's fair to say that 3 of those armies I'll never ever use again, but one was quite interesting.
You don't know what you're going to get, which army you're going to play, and more importantly, what the army is going to be made up of. I normally play the Irish with a totally different loadout to the army that was on the table, so it made it a lot more challenging, but a lot more fun.
Most people when they left seemed to be really happy. They enjoyed the challenge of playing different people, playing under pressure, and definitely playing different war bands. Quite a few people went out saying, oh, quite interested, I enjoyed that war band, I might start collecting them. And a lot of people asked me when the next one would be, which is always a good sign. So I'm tired, because there's a lot of running around. I know the rules a lot better than I did before, because there are a lot of questions I never encountered, and I enjoyed it. So the fact that other people did, absolute bonus.